Awesome. All right, so welcome to my session today on SwiftDialog and user experience. Just want to start out by just saying thank you so much for joining me here. I know there's a ton of great sessions this morning, but I'm honored that you chose this one. And I'm definitely glad that we get to be together in the same room, right? So it's been a few years getting started with the sessions here at PSU Mac and Mins. This is actually my first time at PSU Mac and Mins. How many others of you, this is your first time here? Go ahead. A lot. That's awesome. It's been great so far. Hope you guys are feeling the same. I've practiced, run through this a few times on Zoom with my coworkers and things, and gotta say, it's really not the same as just standing here talking to you guys. I've done a few sessions at some other conferences during COVID. Zoom, it's a little weird, isn't it? Because you basically are recording something, so you don't get that audience feedback. So it's great to be back in front of a live audience. It's awesome. So hopefully I have a few helpful thoughts for you on how we as admins can do things better for our users, right? And give them a better experience. So first of all, I have a confession to make. I am doing a live demo. So the first advice I got actually was from my team and other Mac admins when I told them I was going to present is basically be careful doing live demos, right? Default to like pre-recording everything. You never know what's going to happen. And for better or worse, I just ignored that totally and went the opposite way and said, you know, I'm going to do everything live. So we'll see how this goes, right? If you're brand new to SwiftDialog, you have now seen a couple of examples. The first screen you saw was a full screen dialog, so it can do full screen dialogues. And this is kind of a windowed dialog that you see here. So this is what we're going to talk about today. I even talked to Bart Reardon, who created SwiftDialog, about this to see if he had thought of this or tried this at all, like just to present using this. And he said that he thought about it, but like putting it in Keynote was just like way easier. And now that I'm here and like have created this and gone through it, I am thinking I should have done that, but we'll see. I think this is maybe a little bit cooler. So anyway, about me, my name is John Crain. I'm a client platform engineer at Unity. And I'm also an introvert. How many introverts here? I expect that at a conference like this, we have a few. Awesome. So doing a presentation actually is pretty great because it comes with a built-in excuse to like excuse yourself anytime. You're like, I need to go work on my presentation. So that's pretty cool if you're not too afraid of talking in front of people, I guess. But so that said, if you want to kind of hang out tonight or whatever, I actually have another presentation tomorrow, so I'll be working on that. So sorry. So yeah, tomorrow at the same time, talking about GitHub Actions. So if you're interested in that, come check out that talk. Again, for the hallway track, if you see me and want to chat about anything, happy to talk about any of these things, any of my talks, or really anything in general. So come say hi. Also wanted to mention, since I couldn't really decide on if I was going to do dark mode or light mode, probably have people that kind of do both here today. I'm actually switching in my script between them, so you can kind of see some of the slides in dark mode and see them in light mode and all that. So, so yeah. And you can also do emojis as buttons, which was fun, I thought. Yeah, so you can grab most of the code that created this presentation and run it yourself on your machine if you wanted to. I don't know if you do. Right here, you also find some resources and other things on there including a link to some more repos with some of the examples. I am going to show like demos of things we actually use, and you'll find the code for that repo right there as well. So yeah, that's in the README. Everybody good on this for now? I know there's a 208 Slack channel for this, so maybe someone could drop it in there if you're in there, or maybe it's already there. Oh, there's also speaker notes and things that I think Nate Felton made. Should have the links for this in there as well. So you can also find SwiftDialog on GitHub. And how many folks in here are brand new to SwiftDialog? Is there anyone like you've never heard of it, never used it? Awesome, that's awesome. That's great. So hopefully, if you're new, I'm hoping that you hope this isn't a talk on Swift, the language, because we're unfortunately not going to get too much into that, right? This SwiftDialog is actually a notification tool built with Swift UI. And so we're not going to get too deep into Swift, but I do have one example that I can show you. So I guess there is that. So, and how many of you have used it quite a bit? You have some of your notifications using it? Awesome, handful. I think there's something in here for everyone. Obviously, we come here to learn, get ideas even. Maybe it's not the actual code that we need, it's just an idea, and we can kind of figure it out ourselves. So I definitely think everyone can learn something. So if you want to give some of the examples a try on your machine, I'll have some code. Go ahead on the GitHub here. You can download this release, install it, and give some of these code samples a try. Like I said, SwiftDialog is a dialogue/notification program. It was written in Swift UI, created by Bart Reardon, as I mentioned, in March of 2021. And like many tools that are written by macadmins, he wrote it just to solve one of the problems he had, right? Don't exactly know what that was, but that's what he has said. And it continues to kind of evolve and solve more and more problems with each release that he puts out. He's adding new features, lots of requests from the community. Even stuff that he said wasn't going to be in it is now in it. So he's been great, a great open source developer. Also done some other tools. But this was originally inspired by Nudge, which a lot of you probably have used. I know there's a talk next door about Nudge right now, so it's weird. I can see their slides. It's cool. And Bart himself has done a few talks on this tool, which go through the features, and it's worth a look if you're kind of a visual learner and want someone else's perspective on it as well. Okay. And I was going to mention while we're here, there is a great wiki with kind of all the options that we have available, including things like this web view that you see. You can put a web page. Now, you probably notice it's not going to assign someone in to their session through the web view, but it can be helpful for showing little snippets and customizing maybe more of your notification. So some of the areas we're going to go over today, I'm going to make a case for SwiftDialog, why you should use it, why you should maybe change more of your notifications over to it. We're going to go through some basic usage and examples, start there, and then work our way up to more advanced usage with scripting and things like that. Talk about better user experience, right? Hopefully that's some of why you came, is to learn how to improve that and some of the things that we've learned at Unity. And talk about areas to consider notifications for, see some demos, ask some questions, all that stuff. Sound good? Good. Thank you. All right, so why SwiftDialog, right? Aren't there other tools out there? How many of you guys have used or heard of some of these things, right? How many people here, I know a lot of you are new to SwiftDialog, how many have used some sort of notification system in the past? So a lot, some haven't, that's cool. So how many of you have used like more than one, maybe at the same time, meaning on the same device? Yeah, a lot of you as well, that's cool. So why do we need one more? Why do you think? So I'll go ahead and answer my own rhetorical question here. Some of these tools are purpose-built, right? They're built for one purpose, and they kind of can do that fairly well. And you can customize them a little bit, but once you go outside that purpose, they don't work real well. So you need another one for another specific purpose, right? Some of these are, well, most of these are open source. So a lot of them have stopped being maintained. So those that wrote it either got sick of it or didn't want to put in the effort because they're using something else or they changed jobs. And the projects themselves just kind of die. They die out. They don't get updated for Ventura, the new OS, all that sort of thing. And some of them just aren't great experiences, right? Great experiences for the user. Maybe it looks a little weird, we'd want to change some things and we really can't. Or maybe more importantly, they're not great experiences for us as admins, right? They're difficult to control, difficult to do what we want them to do. And so I want to go over a few reasons why SwiftDialog could be that answer for those problems. And obviously, it is open source. In a few years, Bart could say, I'm done with this. But for now, I think it's a great program, and I'm going to go through some of the reasons why I think it's great. So first of all, customizability. All right. Again, a lot of the other tools we mentioned, one purpose. Those things have their place. But the ability for SwiftDialog to handle like a wide range of things for varying purposes and uses, I think is one of the stronger points for SwiftDialog itself, right? So we don't need to go and find something for this and find something for this. We can customize SwiftDialog once we get comfortable and start using it more and more. It becomes easier and easier to use it for different purposes. So I found my place. You could plug it into Jamf. Bart Reardon is a Jamf user and kind of wrote this as a replacement for Jamf Helper. So I'm not super familiar with Jamf Helper, but any code that you have to run in that to notify users, you can use the same syntax for SwiftDialog in Jamf, and you can run it. Hopefully that makes sense to you, because it only does a little bit for me. I've tried using it through simple MDM scripts. You can run scripts straight from simple MDM, have them alert users. Probably don't want to do that for reasons we'll go into later, but it's possible. You can chain multiple dialogues together, so it's just not like one thing your users are seeing. You can walk them through a process. You can show different sizes of dialogues, that sort of thing on each step. And many folks have even started using this in their own projects. I believe Install-O-Mator and Erase Install from Graham Pugh have now started using SwiftDialog because it's just so customizable. It's just, you could drop it straight into your own project if you have one like that. So oftentimes though, this customizability runs counterintuitive to my next point, which is that SwiftDialog is simple, okay? And I think, and I know, Bart would say kind of the opposite. It's actually getting a little bit complex, but he's talking about kind of the code side of the program, right? The things that he's writing to do all these features is getting a little bit complex. However, what is available to the admin and how we bring up notifications and things is pretty simple, right? It's like one line of code. And kind of more of what I mean by that is SwiftDialog really doesn't do anything on its own, right? Like dep notify or nudge, it's doing these things automatically. But SwiftDialog is a BYOL. It's a bring your own logic, bring your own script, all right? You can do a simple dialogue in very little code. Now, chaining a few dialogues together, like collecting input from users, creating conditional logic based on like external factors of the machine, definitely can be a little bit more complicated, a little bit more confusing, but that is up to you, right? You can make it as complex as you want to, but displaying things in SwiftDialog as part of that code can still be very simple. And finally, we kind of started going through some of these. It just has a ton of features, and we're going to go through more of those now. And like, I really wanted a word for features that ended in ity, so I tried to get some help for this and asked ChatGPT about it, and it did not have a good response for me. So, all right. Can you even see that? We're really not going to go over those. This is just to show you that we can do lists with SwiftDialog. So if you have a lot of text, and we can see this in some of the examples that we're going to show at the end, where we might use something like this, list of apps, list of anything you want, really. It can show that. Okay, it has these timers built in, kind of a simple way to proceed ahead after a time. And you can either show the user the timer, or you can just hide that and just automatically go forward at a certain time. This feature, I believe, is built into tools like dep notify. You can have the user just focus on your notification alone, blur the background. You can capture user input, okay? You can make certain fields required. So if you can't read it, it says name is required. One or more input fields are incorrect. So you can force the user to input their name, their quest. Well, that's not required. And then we also have the collection of secure information. And I'll echo the note of caution from the wiki on this one. Just be aware that the entered string here will still appear in clear text when returned to standard output. So maybe don't use this for passwords or sensitive data, unless you're very comfortable with managing kind of that output, okay? And we can see, we can read in those responses back here, okay? So here's my variable for name, here to stuff. See, I need to fix this. Go back. I'm here to do stuff. My favorite color is actually yellow, okay? You'll also see on this slide and a few of the others that we're using an icon from Apple SF Symbols. It's a built-in library for Swift. It has like over 5,000 icons, so you can go on there. If you don't have images that you want to use, pull out an icon. They're built in, and just use that icon ID, essentially. And you can make them different colors. Obviously, this one's green. And I think Apple's also coming out with animated symbols as well in a future release. So Bart's looking into adding those as well, which would be pretty cool to use. Yeah. Also, any questions before we keep going? I know I've been talking a bit. If you've thought of something, we're going to do Q&A at the end as well. But feel free, if you do have a question about anything here, let me know. And there's like a box that's open up here that I keep stepping on. It's awesome. So be aware. You could do an image carousel. We already saw this, but again, XKCD about standards. We have one more notification standard, but we could show a bunch of them, right? And that's built in. So you just add a few images, and it will show them. If you don't want them to be up front, you can put them in the back as a background image. You can fill up the entire window. You can fill up part of it if you just wanted it under part as well. And you have control of whether you're going to fit it or fill it and that sort of thing, as you would expect. And it can also do system notifications. There are some notifiers that only do this, but this can do the ones that we're seeing here as well as the ones up in the corner of the screen. I didn't want to turn on my notifications and show that, 'cause it might get weird. And this is actually the icon for SwiftDialog, but you can customize that. And like other notification programs, you would have to repackage SwiftDialog and potentially re-sign to get that. So instructions for that, if you are interested in doing that, are on the wiki under the system notifications section on there. All right, so how do we go about using this? So it's possible many of you have already tried this, but once you have it installed, we can run it with a simple command like this, where we're just passing in a title, passing in a message. I believe we can even do this with just a message as well. And I also wanted to mention that Dialog is a binary on disk that lives in library app support, but it also installs a helper program to use user local bin, which is where we see it now since it's in our path, and we can call it straight from just using Dialog with that helper tool. And there are a little bit of differences if we call it directly from library app support or if we call from user local bin in our path. This is actually the file that it installs to that directory. We can see it's doing a couple different things. It's grabbing the path to the actual binary. It's grabbing the current user and the command file, which we're going to get into later. I'm doing a little bit of setup to make it easier and more fluid for when we use it. So just wanted to make you aware, if you're calling it one way or the other, you could get different outputs. So, all right, back to our examples. Slightly more complex example with more arguments would look something like this, and starting maybe to not get so simple anymore. But we can see we're still just doing, our title, message, kind of how we want it to look now a little bit more. Assigning a name for the button, adding a second button, customizing our window, and more. So all those other things that we went through with the features, it's just another flag. And part of that is just reading the wiki, figuring out what the flag is you want, and then adding it to your command. And thankfully, it has a feature to just pass in JSON data. So it can be either a file like you see here, or it can be a JSON string. All right, so this presentation I created with Python, and this is essentially what I'm doing. I'm looping through a bunch of files that just have JSON in them. The JSON files are going to look something like this. I don't think, this might be an actual slide. So I'm combining this one with another one, which we can get into a little bit later. And as you see, you have the key, which is your argument, and you have the value You can just wrap those in JSON. Makes it a lot simpler. Can get a little bit complex if you're using just a shell scripting language. But that's why I tend to use Python for dialogs when I can. Although, obviously, we know Python's not on macOS anymore by default. Our management programs put it on, so we can kind of rely on that. We do have a lot of these that are pre-management or want to run if there's not management or it's broken. So we do some of our notifications in Z shell as well. So, all right. So we're going to take a little bit of break from some of the code and then talk about notifications in general. All right. So, on computer. So I work at a little company called Unity. We do real-time 3D. Perhaps you saw us this year's WWDC. I think this was in the State of the Union for Apple. We kind of partnered with them on the Vision Pro. Anybody excited, interested in getting the Vision Pro here? Could be interesting. I think we probably have a few. I really don't have any inside knowledge on any of this for the Vision Pro anyway. But at Unity, as you can imagine, we have a pretty high proportion of users who are engineers. And as you can imagine, like if we just randomly sent notifications to 6,000 users and just showed them, interrupted their work, might have a few folks upset, right? And a side note, I did try running SwiftDialog on the Vision Pro simulator in Xcode, but it doesn't work. It's like running it on an iPad, really. So I'll put in that feature request for Bart and see when he gets to it. But so if we try to alert our users of something like an update or something they need to do to fix, this is what I imagine they see right here. Something like this, right? And like speaking of unwanted distractions, is a funny story about this. This little guy, he showed up one day during work and just like jumped up on my windowsill there and dropped by unexpectedly to say hi. It was kind of interesting. I wish our notifications were like this and kind of fun, but admittedly they're not, right? So my first tip for a better user experience is don't notify, right? If we want to give our users a great experience, we're not going to want to distract them with a bunch of alerts, okay? So why not? Like I need to, right? Well, it's not a great user experience. Like I said, it can be distracting, it's inconvenient. And if we're honest, like if someone were to do that to us, we'd have an issue with that too, right? So on behalf of your users, I would say like cool down on the notifications and take a good long look on if you should actually do it and if you need to. And I understand you're probably like, yeah, but I need to blah. I get it. But maybe we can brainstorm together and come up with maybe some other options. Maybe there's a better communication channel. Is the thing you want to alert them about better for Slack? Is it better for email or Teams or Discord or whatever your company or organization uses? Now, there was a similar talk about this type of thinking at Mac DevOps this year. And after that, Maddox, the organizer, said something that kind of resonated with me. He said, a sysadmin is indistinguishable from malware. And I thought about that a little bit, and I'm like, no. And I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, that's very true. Right? What we do, we put rootkits on systems. We get users notifications to try to get them to do what we want. It's pretty similar, right? So take this one, for example. Is this legit? Right? What would your user say? How do they know? So by giving users multiple notifications, we can be potentially and inadvertently conditioning them to just accept whatever comes up on their machine. Okay? And this kind of leads me into my next tip here, is be consistent. All right? If you're someone that uses 5 different notification programs, you might want to be considering paring those down to just a few. Maybe consolidate those. And no shame. This was definitely us a few years ago. We had dep notify for initial bootstrapping. We had yo for notifying for file vault. We had other notifications. I can't remember. UMAD for migrations. Nudge for alerting for updates, right? They're all different programs, all different design languages that they have, and all different management, right? It's just not great for the user, not great for the admin. So if we can, try to be consistent. And that's also, like I said, in the design language of our alerts. So here's an example. So I'd recommend to have a banner. Use your logo. Or if you don't have a banner or want a banner, maybe just use the logo, your company logo. And like it says here, make sure they're high quality, right? It just looks bad from an IT perspective if you're using an old logo or a grainy logo or something like that. And make sure to update it when your company branding changes. If you have a design team in your company or organization, like ask them for help. Maybe they could even create logos for your team, for your notifications as well. And add verification. I'm going to mention this a few times, but I might as well here as well. Give your users a way to tell if this is alert from IT or something else. Okay? I love this little help text that Dialog gives you, because it gives you that option to really simplify your alerts, but then give more information, which is also my next tip. Keep it simple. Users are going to prefer shorter notifications that quickly convey necessary information. So aim for clarity and avoid unnecessary verbosity, right? So use that clear and concise language. Don't use technical jargon or terms, and make sure double check your grammar and your punctuation. Run it by a few other people, communication department even, if you have one of those. So here's an example from something you guys might recognize. This is kind of crafted after the original Nudge. And there's a lot of words on there, isn't there? How long is it going to take you to read all that? How long do you want to distract your users for? There's going to be few users. There will be some, honestly, right, that are going to sit there and read all of this, but it's not going to be many, especially if they're not controlling when they see this. So if we clean that up, I know that Nudge has a simple mode. It looks something more similar to this, where we see a direct call to action. It's simple, it's quick to read. You can read it in a few seconds. You know what's going on. Again, if users need more information, those few users that would read it all can click that help info, read more, verify it. As long as it's consistent and they know, they're going to be able to do that and be able to tell, whether that's from IT or from somewhere else. All right. I think we mentioned this, but make sure it's actionable. Don't message for something that might happen. Anybody have issues with Migration Assistant? like machines running off of management. I see a few. So if your users use Migration Assistant and they're enrolled in an MDM, it's going to break the trust with the MDM if they copy over system and network. That's actually fixed in Ventura, thankfully. But before that, we had a lot of issues with this. We had like over 100 machines that just weren't in management anymore. So we had to create a pop-up that opens when a user opens the app. So I'm going to actually do this, another actual demo. So I opened up Migration Assistant and immediately had this pop-up come up. Okay, it gives them instructions about using that program right when they need it. All right, so not like during their onboarding or during just a random Slack message or an email. They're going to forget that, right? Right when they need it, they can come take a look at the instructions, verify it again, take a look at what they need to do. Are all users going to do this? Probably not, but it helps. So again, make it actionable. I guess that actually was under this, make it timely. So do that right in the moment. And finally, communicate it, right? And this is going to include documentation. We touched on this, but that verification part, you're going to want the documentation about it. So whether you guys have a wiki or an internal help desk site, put those notifications there. Say, then you can give more information about it, tell the users why you're doing it, maybe give the policy that it's related to, and that sort of thing. Definitely going to be suited better for a second channel. You're not going to want to pop up something like, this is how you verify, because that would be not great as well. And then communicate to your IT team. Make sure they're aware. Are you going to notify 500 users of something new? They should know, because they're going to be handling those requests about whether it's actually real or not. Okay? Again, if you have a communication department, lean on them, help them, work with them, figure out the best way that you can communicate that. All right, I'm going to go back into more code, give you some more examples, and show you a little bit more things. So I wanted to mention, again, this is a web view, so this is just reading the raw file on GitHub of this presentation, which is a little meta, but that's fine. So showing an alert's easy, right? But it's when it comes to like showing multiple alerts or doing something with those alerts that gets a little more complex. And we do need to kind of rely on scripting to do this. So in this example, you can see a Z shell script. We good on the back on reading that? Is that okay? Perfect, because I can't make it bigger. So you can find this on my GitHub, and it's that under the code folder if you need it a little bit bigger. But we can see we kind of have that same structure that we did on our basic example where we're doing a message. This one we actually are adding a button to as well. And we're running that in our script. And then we can read the output of that command. That's what this part is. That is getting the output of the last run command, the exit code for it. And we can say, if that exit code is 0, do this. In this example, open another dialog box. Say user pressed OK. If that exit code is 2, do this. User pressed cancel. Okay. Now, SwiftDialog lets you have 3 buttons currently. If you need more, that's a feature request. But the first button you see here, the default button, is always going to exit 0. The button number 2 is going to exit 2. And then the third button is going to exit 3. Now, if a timer expires or some other things, it exits different exit codes, so you can handle that differently. Does that make sense to everyone? Pretty clear? Nodding? Good. Awesome. If we go ahead and run that, it's going to look something like this. We see our message. It has some of the defaults that SwiftDialog has built in, like that title and that icon. If we hit OK, we can see another dialog pops up because we read that exit code of 0. User pressed OK. Great. Okay? And that's the basic building blocks of kind of chaining some of these dialogues together. All right, here is a more advanced one. Now this one also is sending commands to what is called a command file. So what a command file allows us to do is to update a running dialog. Okay, if you notice the Y SwiftDialog notification earlier in the presentation, it ran through a bunch of different messages, and that was by updating the command file. All right. So in this example, we're running our command, but we're also adding this ampersand here, which tells the script to keep going. Keep running. Don't wait for an exit code. And then this variable right here is a special shell variable that stores the process ID of the most recently executed background process, which would be this one. This is now in the background because we're going to continue our script. So that's the process ID of that dialog window. So right here, we can kind of do anything we want. Right in this example, we're basically doing the same thing that's built into SwiftDialog and running a timer. It's going to send a command to our command file. By default, it's in var temp. And what we send is available on the wiki. There are not all the options available to update. However, a lot of them are. And we can see that we have what we're going to update here as the key. And then we pass in the value we want it to be for our command file. So as you expect, this is going to count down how much time we have left. And then after that happens, sorry, I forgot to mention, we're disabling button 1, so they can't go on. After that countdown finishes, we're going to send another update to the command file for the user to press OK, and then to enable the button. All right, so our notification's still running in the background at this point. So we also need to tell when that stops. And that's where that process ID comes back in. And that is this code right here. It's just waiting for that process ID to end. All right? Pretty clear. After that, we apply that same logic that we had in the first example, where we read that exit code and then do something. So if we look at those dialogues, we can see it's getting updated with our little timer. Hopefully we can see, yeah. And then it updates our message, and then we can continue on. So I could wait like this forever, and it won't end. Now SwiftDialog does have a command Q option. You can just quit out of it. There is an option to make that something else, or I believe disable that altogether, but your user could potentially command Q out of the program and quit that notification. So if you're using something where you disable the OK, you might want to disable quitting as well. Cool. So like I said, I write a lot of my code in Python. Python's a little bit easier to handle JSON data and to write loops and things. At least it's easier for me. Might not be for you. But this is an example of something similar to what we use. We basically create a class for our dialog alerts that allows us to create an instant of an alert, and we can also give it some default characteristics. Okay, so we don't have to define these every time. We can set them up by default. So if we want it to be a certain size, right? If we want the icon to be a certain icon, et cetera, right? So you don't have to define it on every time you run an alert. We also have a couple of functions related to doing the actual alert here, and then updating the dialog or sending that command to that command file. So we can just pass in that command and the value that we want to give it. So here's a little quick example. So we create a new dialog alert. We're going to edit the title. Going to change that dictionary for title to our title. We're going to change that message to our message. And again, this is where we can add other options. Doesn't have to be any of those default. We can add more, like if we're doing an image or a carousel or adding a timer, things like that. We can add those in here. And then we can call it and store the response as our status. So if we ran something like that, it's less impressive to just see that though, but that's what that code does. And also have a Golang example. Now, I don't have a ton of experience in Go. I have written a few tools in it. This I actually gave to ChatGPT to write. I gave him the Python and said, write this in Go. And it did it, and it works. I'm not going to vouch for this entire script, but it does do what you expect. This is actually running it. We can see it. This is a Go example. And then did the same thing with Swift. This is all Swift code to run SwiftDialog, which is pretty cool. And we can see that. There's a Swift example. Yes?
Handle users with different screen sizes, like 800 by 600 for people with bad eyes, and
yeah.
then the really tight screen.
So that would be part of what I mentioned before, that it's kind of going to be up to the admin, because SwiftDialog itself just doesn't have a lot of that built in. So if you set it to a fixed window size, it's going to show up at that window, and it's going to be bigger than the screen, essentially, which might not be ideal. So what you could do is read in the values for your resolution, and then either put an if statement. If it's lower than a certain amount, add the window and height and width to be smaller, or do it as a percentage of the screen size, something like that. So it'll be up to the script, though, to do that. Okay. Sorry, I forgot to mention, since those online probably couldn't hear, question was about for smaller screen sizes, what would you do? All right. So one of the best time to notify your users is on the first boot of the machine. So I did want to take a look at some Bootstrap examples, because I think they really showcase what SwiftDialog can do. So this first one is actually calling technically it's our test Bootstrap code. And I'll tell you why in a moment. But this, you don't have the exact Don't have the exact code to this, but so the idea is to run this video while the machine is doing some other things, so they're not just waiting for their machine to install a bunch of programs, right? We actually aren't showing that to our users yet. I think it's kind of, would be kind of interesting to show a video and play audio, like the old school macOS intros during that. So we're not technically doing that yet, but it can make for a pretty cool Bootstrap process. So before this, you saw our required applications getting installed. And what that is doing is reading in a list of those applications. And then when it sees that those applications are installed, so it's looking for a file path on disk, if that exists, gives it a check mark and goes on to the next one. Once that exists, gives it a check mark, goes on to the next one. Now we end up here and allow our users to install some basic apps. Now, we used to just say, we think we know what you want. Most people are going to want Chrome. They're going to want Zoom, our VPN, and that sort of thing. And interestingly enough, we got complaints about that. So we have users that want to use Slack in their browser. They don't want to use Chrome. They want to use Firefox. They don't want Chrome installed. And so we had requests to be like, hey, can we just not install anything? And we wanted to strike a balance of being helpful for our users, but at the same time, giving them agency to their device. So building that trust with the users that are maybe a little bit more technical, know how they want to set up a device, and giving them the options to do that. So we can see here, we can go ahead and toggle some of these off if we don't want the VPN. So this set Unity wallpaper is a script inside our script, or sorry, a function inside our script that will call desktopper and set the wallpaper for our users to a branded one. Obviously, we have some other common programs like Slack and Zoom. And now you can also see icons here. If you just point the icon location to an app, it will find the icon and put it there. Obviously, for these aren't on disk yet, so we're reading them actually off our monkey repo, pulling the icon down from there. But we can go ahead and run this. It takes a minute to kind of load. And we can see it's checking to make sure all those things are done. And then it is running monkey in the background, so that's why it takes a little bit longer to finish. And then once it's done, we let them know, hey, device is good. We have some other stuff they might want to do, add more software that's not listed there, that sort of thing. Get information about what we do for device management and that sort of thing. So that's one example. And a lot of that code, obviously not the Unity stuff, is online on my GitHub. Here's another great tool from Dan Snelson. This is a bit more turnkey, has a little bit of support as well. There's a Slack channel on macadmin Slack for it if you have questions. And Dan has been great at adding lots more features to it. It is currently for Jamf only, I believe, although you can take parts of the script out and kind of put them in your own if you wanted to. His is written in Bash or Z shell, I'm not sure, one of those. But this is what it looks like. Now it does a little bit more. It's taking user input. It's actually reading like my name, the type of machine I have, what time of day it is, and showing this icon based on that. I think these are all options within the program. You can turn them on and off. It's actually testing the connection, running a script to say, what's this connection like? How long would that compute to take for doing these different things, which is pretty handy. Also shows off some other features of what SwiftDialog can do. As far as the required fields, this first one uses regex to make sure that the user is inputting an actual tag number. So it's got to be 7 digits. If you do that, it will fail that regex and let you know why. So if we add another number there, we select here and here, hit continue, we're going to see something similar to our Bootstrap. So there's a couple of examples of code, if you were to go and look at these, of how to kind of update a list and run through some different things for your own scripts and things. Kind of similar things as far as finalizing. This one also has some interesting help info. This actually isn't my serial number. I edited the code, so you can't steal it. But gives some help, like if the user were to call their tech support, we have that information right up there for the user. It's nice and easy for them to see. And I might steal some of this for my own. So, if a failure is detected, gives them more instructions. If it's not, it would let them kind of go, and has a bunch of different options for what happens when the user's done. It's in debug mode, so we're seeing this. Okay. So again, that was Set Up Your Mac by Dan Snelson. Yeah.
Just in addition, there's now like Slack and Teams webhooks for that. So if the dialogue does fail or if it is complete, you can get a notification in a dedicated like webhook channel with that, so that your users aren't actually contacting you. You can see it before they're even notified of what's going wrong.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot built into that, which is awesome, and it's also a bit terrifying as well if you want to kind of weed through it. But are you a current user? Awesome. Do you help with Dan with that at all? I know there's a few that have.
Some bug report things,
Cool.
like that, but yeah, we have it fully implemented for onboarding for every computer, and we've even skipped that initial like user input
Yeah.
dialogue.
Yep.
It just installs what we need to install.
I should be doing the catch box here. So let me try to summarize here. So what was your name?
Jared.
Jared? Mentioned that Set Up Your Mac also has webhooks built in, so that if you do have failures during that Bootstrap, it could send to Teams or Slack and let your team know that that happens. Is there anything else there? Yeah, that was pretty much the gist of that. But again, encourage you to reach out to the Set Up Your Mac channel if you have more questions on that one. All right. Another great time to notify your users is when you're walking them through a complex project or a process, sorry, like an MDM migration. So we created something like this based on UMAD from Eric Gomez, which I believe is still in Python 2. It's not been updated in a while because he hasn't needed it, right? So it's one of those things that's just kind of not being maintained. But it's also pretty easy to throw into SwiftDialog. My machine is already in an MDM. I'm not switching MDMs here, so a bit of this code is truncated. But we essentially, when we're migrating MDMs, we'll take a look and kind of customize our script so that we're looking for the right MDM. Actually, first of all, we're looking to see if the machine is enrolled in anything, because if it's enrolled in something, you can't enroll in a new thing. So if it's in DFP, the admin has to remove it before the user can do anything. And this will wait until that's removed. And then once it sees it's removed, it'll pop up and walk them through this notification. And it also detects whether the machine is in DEP or if it's not, and it will go through different enrollments and show different messaging based on those two things. So this is kind of the device enrollment or ADE or however you want to say it walkthrough. Again, you can see some verification. And when we hit send notification, you're going to see, usually you would see something up in the corner of the screen, not while I'm presenting here, but it's going to let the user know to look for that. It's going to pause so that they can go do that and click on that and then walk them through that process. Okay? And once it sees that that machine is enrolled in MDM, it'll come back with success. If the user does not complete it, it will pop up after like 5 minutes or so. I forget what exactly it's set to, and say that it wasn't complete, give them some different options for what to do next, and that sort of thing. So very customizable, can branch if certain things show this dialog, if not, show that one. And then after a while, it just moves on. Couple more resources. There are a few listed on the wiki. These are actually on the repo for the presentation as well. So if you can't write all those down, they're up there as links. All right. That is all I have. Any questions? Any thoughts? Yeah. I'll throw this here.
My question is for general debugging. If you're able to show like what it logs in, basically in the system log or in a debugging log, so that you can see the progress of what failed, what buttons were clicked, how long things took, anything like that.
Yeah, so that's actually going to be somewhat up to the script that you use. So this is the one I was doing the presentation with. And we can see I went ahead and added logging to it. So I can see what slide I'm on, kind of what file it's pulling, all that. But that was kind of up to me to put in. And I don't believe SwiftDialog logs to any location. But it does go to standard out, standard in. So, yes, was that working? Can you guys hear that, Mike? Is it good?
Can you guys hear me?
Okay. It's weird up here, that's all. Didn't know if I needed to repeat the question again or not.
Hello, okay. So is there any security that I can do on it so there's no malicious code that can run SwiftDialog anyhow? Like any code that I can put on SwiftDialog, so every script I run, I have to have that key so it can run only from me?
I'm not aware of anything. But that might be a question to ask in the SwiftDialog channel on Slack, see if Bart knows.
On Mac admins?
On Mac admins, sorry. Right. I don't know if it was not on there. There is a SwiftDialog channel.
I'll check.
Hashtag SwiftDialog, I think all one word. Obviously, you can do that in your script if you didn't want your script to run.
No, my concern is that no
yeah.
malicious code can run SwiftDialog.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't believe there's anything built in for that.
Okay.
So.
I'll leave it as a feature request.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Question in the back then.
Hello. Tomorrow I'm doing a presentation on guiding users through enabling camera, microphone, and screen sharing for different applications. We're using Dep Notify, and what we're doing is we're showing a video for each of the steps, waiting for the user to enable camera, then microphone, then screen sharing. So the video's looping this whole time until they complete the process. I saw you had a video, like a YouTube video.
Correct.
Displaying during the slide. We're using local videos, but I guess YouTube videos could work. But is that something that's possible with SwiftDialog?
I believe it is, yeah. So they can be local videos. You can YouTube's actually a newer feature that it pulls in, but I believe looping is set up there as well.
Okay, so you can loop the video and you can use a local video. And then
Yes.
follow-up question, are
Yeah.
you able to, so another thing we can do is actually display whether or not they did camera, microphone, and screen sharing in whatever order with like a little checkbox, but
Yeah.
can that be presented like on top of the video in any way? Or does the video take up the full screen?
It does. It takes up whatever part of the window you want it to take up.
Okay.
So if the window is fairly narrow, it could be on the top and have something under it.
Oh, really? So you can have like multiple things in the window.
Yes, as far as like updating it with a command file, that would take some testing. It's not
Yeah,
just
yeah.
something I've done. Haven't had a need for it, but I would guess there is a way to do that.
Okay.
But yeah, I would have to test that out.
Cool, thanks.
Just to add to that, we actually have done something like that at work. So you can put two videos together and toggle them in different sections. So you could have two next to each other and then have one on top or one below. But we've also done migrations with videos through YouTube and Vimeo. So you can have them locally or run just through the link.
Can you also control where the window is?
Yes.
Like on the
Yeah, you can set a window position. I think the Setup Your Mac showed that second window was kind of up in the left while the other ones were centered. That was a question about whether you can control the window position, obviously. Anyone else have a question? Over here.
For the system dialog notifications up in the top right corner, can you do customizable buttons and actions within that, or is it just info?
It's very limited. I believe there are buttons, and you can also have it expand to show more as part of that. It's not something we use, so I haven't dug a lot into it. But from what I remember of the wiki, there is a few options, but like I said, it's pretty limited. Any other questions, SwiftDialog, or notifications in general? There's one quick thing that isn't in my presentation that I wanted to mention. There is a builder option as well. And I forgot to add it in here. But let me see if I can do this, though, real quick. Get rid of my images, show my slides. If we, I hope this is right, set builder to true. That's my question slide. We go back, we go forward. You can bring up a SwiftDialog builder, which Bart added to kind of help customize windows a little bit easier, so you don't have to kind of go back and forth. So you can control the font size here. This is just a title font, but you can control kind of the window height, so you can get it to be exactly what you want. I think if I'm setting the width and height, I can't use that. Let me make that smaller again. So you can force on top, make it movable or not, so a user can't move it. Again, the progress bar, all those different things. Definitely want to check out. If you run Dialog with -- builder, it will just come up, or you can pass it in with your code as well. So that's another cool example. I think I wanted to look at this media part as far as like looping. I don't see it here, but not everything that is available is in Builder. It's kind of as he remembers to put it in, really. But once you build something that you like, you can have it generate the code for it. Gives you that JSON. You can just save that as a file and then run it from there. Does that bring up any other questions? If not, then Thank you so much again for coming. Survey is at the bottom if you have any feedback on the session. But thank you for coming. I appreciate it.